Tales from the wild. Stories from the heart. A journey into the mind and soul of fired-up business professionals where they share their vision for the future. And hear from a different non-profit organization every month as they create awareness of their goals and their needs. Dive into a world of untamed passion as we join our host Shireen Botha for this month's episode of Friends from Wild Places.
So as a younger person, growing up in South Africa, what were some of maybe the core beliefs about whether it has to do with one specifically that you're talking about, maybe not being heard in grammar school or primary school or, even...
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting. I've been going through a very hot time with my therapist. So there's been and it's been amazing, this journey that I call my life, because I've really gone through some major healing. And here I am hitting 40 and I'm still having hot times with my therapist. And I call them hot times because everything will be going smoothly with my therapist, chatting, dealing with normal day-to-day things. And then all of a sudden, something will just hit it. And it's like I regurgitate. And all of this just comes out of me. And a whole box gets unlocked. Pressed down, suppressed, forgotten about, not, and it comes out and shows me all the reasons why I did this and this and this and this, and it makes sense at the point after. It's very draining, but afterwards I go, oh my gosh, that makes sense. That is why for so long I just thought I was crazy. I just thought I was, just something was wrong with me. I always just thought something just seriously wrong with me. And I've always thought that. I've always thought something is just up here, hasn't been 100% correct with me for many, many, many years. And as these boxes get opened, certain behaviors get explained. And so it's been a hell of a ride and a really good one, but a very hard one, very emotional one. So, a lot of my core beliefs have been messed up. And I think a big part of the reason why is because not a lot of things were like communicated to me in the sense of this is how you can get through something like this. And also I didn't talk about it because in my mind, in my little mind as a girl, it wasn't, you don't talk about things like that. So there was, because of that thing in my mind, I never spoke about a lot of different things that I was going through as a little girl and a lot of things that were happening to me. And by me not talking about it, I got into the mindset of, okay, I'm not allowed to talk about this, but in the same breath, I have to figure out how to deal with this. So therefore, Shireen, little girl mind, had to figure it out on her own. So I felt very alone. So because of that, and having to deal with that on my own, and having to figure it out on my own, a lot of the certain behaviors that I adopted was because of a hardening, of a protection, of I had to protect myself. Because if no one else was going to protect me, I had to protect myself. And so a lot of that formed a lot of my behaviors. Some being fine, no problem, and other things being not so good. And so, beliefs like I'm not heard, beliefs like something's wrong with me. Also remember, I didn't know that a lot of these things growing up was not normal until in my adult age as well. So now I can talk about it because I now know, oh, wait, that wasn't right. That actually shouldn't have happened. And, I should have spoken about it and I didn't. So, but during that time had no other, that's all I knew. I thought it was normal. I just carried on with life, so no one could have picked it up. It was just happening. And I didn't even, know any different. I just thought this was normal. I had to deal with this the best way that I could in my little brain and body. So that's what I did. And that's how I got through life. Now, looking back, I am now having to deal with, oh, wait, Shireen, that is actually not normal. Let's deal with that and all the things that went with dealing with that. And so that's what's coming up. So, yeah, it's your core beliefs, if they are untrue in any way, shape, or form, you got to find what those core beliefs are and find out why you believe them. And it's really important because you won't believe how many root issues you will find that explain those core beliefs, why you believe those things. And I don't know about you, Tanya, but I think there's a lot of people in this world that have incorrect core beliefs about themselves, but that's all they know and that's all they understand. Therefore, they don't think it's incorrect. And so
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as in hearing you speak, Shireen, like my mind is just like racing as far as like, so there's so many things I want to like just come to the table. So one is, so the core beliefs are our own like response to our world. Right. So growing up, not every family has good communication. Some cultures have it, like the children are to be seen and not heard. Others give the children too much importance, right? To where the kids run the household. And I think that's back to Joe the nanny coming in.
Yeah.
And then you get all these children that are now of age and going out into the real world and finding relationships and partners and spouses and expecting to communicate with somebody that has been raised in a completely different environment. So you take somebody that was, given the opportunity to run the house, and then you have somebody that's going to be only seen and not heard. Well, how can those two people communicate effectively? It's like, and that's probably why people default to therapists and coaches. I don't know about if this is an Italian thing. I'm just going to speak because my family is Italian. Is you're not supposed to air out your dirty laundry. Like that's taboo in our culture. So it's almost like, you're not supposed to go to therapist. You're not supposed to, you don't tell what's happening in the home. So if you're raised under those set of beliefs, then you're like, well, who are you supposed to talk to? Right. And as we get older, you start maybe reading or, reaching out or talking to different people. So I'm personally a firm believer in getting objective opinions. So whether people get a therapist, a coach, people are trained. But the other conversation is just because someone is licensed in their field and credentialed in their field doesn't mean that they're quote unquote good or good for the individual. Right. Let's just talk about like simple things, women, right? We maybe get our hair done. And I know a lot of women spend a lot of time with weaves and extensions and wigs and braids and color and cuts. Well, not everyone that has gone to hairstyling school or is a hairstylist is good. There's ones out there that are not good, right? Just like doctors and lawyers and teachers and every other type of occupation, but we don't know. So if you think that you're picking a therapist because they're credentialed as a therapist, how do we know if they're the right one for us?
Yeah. And it's right. And let me tell you something. That is normal. That is so normal to find a therapist that doesn't suit you. And it is okay to be picky about your therapists. It really is. It's no offense to the therapist and it's no offense to you. If you find a therapist that does not suit you, or you don't feel comfortable, or it's just, not what you're looking for and needs, someone specializing in something specific, there's nothing wrong with discontinuing with that therapist and finding a different one that suits you. And I think a lot of people might think that it's wrong, that the therapist that you get is the therapist that you've got, and you got to stick with that therapist. And if you want to leave your therapist, something's wrong with you, not necessarily the therapist. It's got nothing to do with either party. You just got to find the right doctor for you. I'm sorry for interrupting. Please continue, Tanya.
No worries, Shireen, no worries. So, but that brings me to a point though, that when we are seeking information, right? So like, let's say back in the day, it was probably my first marriage and going to quote unquote marriage counseling. I didn't know such things. Like I didn't, like you picked a therapist that maybe was covered under your insurance and that's who you went to, and you were given whatever, 5 sessions, 6 sessions. You didn't know if they were good, or, I mean, you didn't know, like, you didn't even know what questions to ask, never mind if they were a good therapist or not one for you, because you're just there asking for help.
Right.
And if they solved and they said, okay, it's you could stay in this marriage, or it's encouraged to stay, you would say, oh, it's a good therapist. If they said you have to, it's not recommended, or, you discover on your own that maybe this isn't the best relationship, it's like, oh, they couldn't help, they must be a bad therapist. So I became like very judgmental, like on these. So, and I've been married twice, as I've shared very openly on these podcasts, that sometimes we just project into the world, like, again, from our perspective, right? And I think what you were sharing just several minutes ago was the coping mechanisms that we all do. And I teach thanatology at Miami-Dade College, which is the study of death and dying in mortuary school, people that are going to become funeral directors and embalmers. And we learn about the children's like kind of evolution about how they deal with stress and traumas and stressors and reactions to things in the household. And it's fascinating because usually it starts right around the age, like between 6 and 9, people start getting the tendencies. I'm going to use the word OCD, obsessive compulsive disorders. And it doesn't mean that it's a disorder. It just means that it's a way to cope with stressors. So people can start having behaviors. And again, it's a spectrum, right? It's not just, oh, everyone that has OCD becomes a clean freak, or everybody that OCD, is a cutter, right? There's a spectrum of OCDs. But I think as children, in response to our environment, whatever our environment is, right? And if you believe in energy work, they say we picked our parents, right? So that's another conversation for another time. But whatever we are, it's like we're raised in the household or lack thereof. And some people are going through, being adopted and, having surrogate parents, foster parents, which is, again, maybe a future podcast for a future time. But I just think it's like, but we don't know. So here we are growing up in our day-to-day. And that's normal, because who's going to question it? We don't know anything outside of our own family. And sometimes it's a nuclear family, sometimes it's extended family, sometimes it's a blended family. Sometimes, it's, 2-parent household, single parent household. And I finally, maybe about 7 years ago or so, finally came to the resolution that parents, right, are only doing the best that they can do with the knowledge that they have at that time. And I'm sure there's listeners out there that grew up in parents with addictions, or extended family with addictions, or people that have defaulted to, substance, drug abuse, other types of things, to where if that's what you grow up with, who's questioning that that's abnormal? Right? That's what you're brought into. Whether you have food on the table or no food on the table, that's your reality, and that's what you think is normal. So then as we evolve and, we start meeting other people, and, whether it's through school, and I think that's another opportunity to see other cultures. sometimes, and I think I'm going to use the word, and it's a strong word, Shireen, but like the jealousy comes in, right? Because what we perceive maybe as a child going over somebody's home after school, and I know some cultures that sounds probably absurd, like you just stay in your own family, you don't go see other people's house. But when you do, it's like, why does this person have more toys than me? Why does this person have more accessories, like, their own bedroom? Maybe some people share their 4 kids in a bedroom, they have 2 sets of bunk beds, all these different things, but we don't know until we start exploring. But when nothing is explained, the reaction sometimes can be jealousy. Right. And I think,
yeah,
go ahead.
Say, but that's the trick. That is the trick with you. There are certain things the kids are going to see, the kids are going to experience as they grow up. And if you don't have someone there that's going to explain to the children as they see and experience things, they will automatically go towards, they have to explain it to themselves. So, and most of the time, the explanations to themselves can be, why do they have more toys than me? That's not fair, and jealousy. So it seems like if you don't guide the children's mind in the correct way of why certain things are the way they are, they will do it themselves, and many times in the incorrect way. Did I say that?
Yeah.
Tune in next week for part 3 of Friends from Wild Places.
You've been listening to Friends from Wild Places with Shireen Botha. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast from the links to catch every episode and unleash your passion.